Right, let's get this over with. Let's talk about Thor. I imagine this one will be quite a lot shorter than most because, like I'll kind of break it down into talking about the goddess and, how their ability works, the mechanics. And then we go through the deck card by card. And then at the end, if necessary, we kind of like give a summary of the deck and just overall how it's supposed to work if it's not obvious. But this is pretty simple. I've talked about, like how Izanagi and Izanami, like the best goddesses tend to give you like additional options, additional strategic options. Thor's not one of those. It's not difficult to like talk about her, and this video won't take long because her ability doesn't offer you anything that you can't already do. I mean, it offers slightly something, but you could really only describe it as neat, not game changing, not useful, not like a major strategic advantage that she has over other goddesses. When Thor destroys a permanent, she gets 2 devotion. That is very insignificant most of the time. That's really not gonna, like really make a lot of difference in almost all games. Occasionally, very, very rarely, it might like, save you or cause you to win a game that you otherwise would lose. But most of the time, you kind of like, you might attack and then realize that the 2 devotion gives you enough to just to like move a square or play an extra card. And you're like, oh, that's neat. That's good. It's okay, but realistically, Thor is not a top tier goddess. She doesn't allow you to do things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do. There are none of the, like the incredible levels of freedom that other gods or goddesses give you. The ability is very boring and basic. The good thing is about her, of course, she's got the 6 base and she's got the 90 health. So in some respect, you could say like she doesn't have any terrible matchups, but you can't really say she doesn't have any bad matchups because her bad matchup is basically anything that's comparable. Like Isis has 6 base, so and Isis's ability is far more useful than Thor's. So arguably that's a bad matchup for Thor, if you know what I mean. Like the same with Izanami. Like Izanami's a 690, but her ability is actually game changing. It changes the way that you play the game. It offers you ways of playing the game that otherwise you wouldn't have. Thor doesn't offer you that. She's very boring. Her ability isn't that impactful. I mean, it's only 2 minutes 30, but I've pretty much explained Thor as much as you really need to explain Thor, Now let's talk about the deck, which is like far, far more exciting than Thor actually is. Because, I kind of felt very comfortable about this deck in the first place. After going through campaign mode so many times, you kind of get a feel for what's going to work, what's not going to work. One of the strengths that Thor does have is just that she's Norse. I think Norse mythology has some of like the best stuff in the game. Arguably it's the best mythology. I've got to say, if someone asks me like which is the best mythology, I'd probably say Norse. There are quite a few cards that like recommend it and are like superlative to other mythologies. But I must say Idun Tree is like one of the biggest deals. I think this card is absolutely insanely good. I think it's absolutely stupidly good. For one thing, this is Isis's ability just tagged onto a card. That's kind of crazy, and Idun Tree counters an awful lot of strategies, like similar to Isis, like Seaquakes. Yeah, that's fine. You're going to get healed up. Plagues, Pharaoh's Plague, all the strategies. If your opponent's trying to like ping you off the board, Idun Tree is just it's just a pillow. It just smothers them. Like that whole strategy, it actually like cancels out a lot of things that like quite a lot of opponents want to do. The card is very strong, and it's still a 9/5, which is kind of crazy because you have other cards like Taisho. In order to get such a great ability, you have to pay in devotion. Taisha's an 8/3, which means that you make 1 devotion profit after 3 turns. That's not so great. Like Idun Tree on the other hand, beast card. Absolutely fantastic. You make 4 devotion profit after 3 turns. The card is just very, very good. The ability counteracts a lot. It can be seriously annoying to deal with if you can't get to the Idun Tree. There are other aspects. We'll go through Norse as we go. I'll talk about Kraken and Skadi first, right? Normally, I tend to have like 4 to 6 win conditions, Sphinxes, Ningios, just something that offers you like great return on your investment in terms of trades. So Kraken is a 7 for 20, so that's 3.5 per 10. That's fine. It's not amazing, and you know, like the 7 for 20 is kind of clunky because it doesn't work quite so well with battle plans or Skadi. But in terms of Norse, like they don't have anything super cheap, which isn't surprising because they have Skadi and battle plan, which would make anything super cheap broken. As it is, this is still pretty strong because Skadi herself is a 5 for 4 because of her ability, which affects her as well. It says 6-4, but actually she's a 5-4, and she affects all other Norse units you have. So she's got that tankiness of 40, which I absolutely love. 5-4 is around like Fujin level, like it's still above average. It's still good in terms of attack return. But, you know, like one Skadi is okay, it's kind of acceptable. But because she buffs every other Norse unit, suddenly, you know, if you've got 2 Skadi on the board, she goes down to 4, which is Ningyo level, and that is incredible. But if you've got, like, the same though, because the whole point is that Skadi does exactly what Battle Plan does. So these two together are a bit ridiculous. There were matches where, you know, I'd like a Skadi down, 2 or 3 Battle Plans, and the Skadi's hitting for like 2-3 devotion per attack. That just game over. Like, oh, like just game over. And then Kraken is like the cherry on top. You know, Skadi is a 5 for 10. If Skadi's on the board, then Kraken, of course, is a 6 for 20. So Kraken is your ultimate finish here. Also, the 7 for 20 is clunky, but it does get around stuff like Balder or Wall of Asgard, where, you know, like per attack, they add an additional cost. But since Kraken only has to attack once into those units, Kraken is surprisingly good into Norse stuff. You know, the stuff that makes other things cost more, Kraken is very good into. And, you know, like this makes a set which is kind of more just like I don't even know how to say it, like more extensive than like my normal win conditions. Normally my win conditions are like Ningyo's Sphinxes 4 to 6, but this is like a whole Kraken Skadi battle plan combo, and you get any combination of these on the floor, and this like things just go crazy. This is definitely like the deck more than any other deck that I've ever made that's all about, you know, like making great trades on the board. It's about like damage transfer on the board, you know, unit transfer on the board, and just how you can, like, if your opponent cannot get rid of this Kraken or this Skadi or your battle plans, they cannot really fight with you. Like any sort of fight, you're gonna win. You know, like the trading is so good in this. Right, Armageddon. Talked about Armageddon a lot. I've got 3 copies, but you know you can have like 2 to 4. It really depends on the amount of cycling you've got in your deck. Thor also appreciates just that ability to reset occasionally because she's got the base 6. Armageddon very rarely is a bad move for her. If it takes things back to base and you're both at 0 devotion, then Thor is either even or ahead of every other goddess in the game, with the exception of an Amaterasu who has like a crazy gigantic hand, or, you know, like a Hades that has a whole ton of stuff in the grave, you know, and they're just making like 10 devotion a turn natural. You know, like Armageddon is very rarely like a bad idea with 4. Earthquake, Seaquake, these are all the things that, you know, seem to be in like almost every deck I've got. You know, they're solid, they're your emergency buttons. If things just get out of hand, this is tends to be, you know, like what you're going for. Mummy, I've talked about this card enough. Honestly, like, check other deck descriptions. It trades well, it's super amazing, great chaff unit. They destroy it, you get like a bit of a positive trade because it costs more to destroy it than it does for you to just spend 8 devotion, almost always, and then you just use it all over again. Rise of the Pharaoh, talked about it all the time. Sometimes you just need that bump. In terms of like, you might be at 16, but you really need to Seaquake. Rise of the Pharaoh, of course. Same with Armageddon. Like, sometimes you just need that extra 4 devotion. It really does make a difference. It allows you to just get that extra few attacks in. Battle Plan I've just talked about. Idun Tree I've just talked about. These are some of the best cards that Norse has to offer, and they work really well together. Everflowing Sun, Taisho too. I think you need a certain amount of cycling in decks. I think you need the ability to thin your deck. Sometimes you need answers, and if you don't have that answer in hand, it's game over. There's nothing else to say, really. If you really need Armageddon and your opponent is just miles ahead of you, especially in insane mode, because they can start so fast, far faster than you because they get the bonus devotion, you know, they can throw down boards that you just can't compete with, and sometimes you just have to say, look, it's insane mode. They've got the advantage from turn 1. I have to find this Armageddon and just try and get things back to parity. Try and get things back to equal. Because from equal, I have confidence that my deck is better than their deck, and we'll be able to, beat them. So yeah, I don't actually like Everflowing Sun. I kind of think it sucks, but I just think sometimes you just have to use this card. Like, effectively, it thins your deck by 2 to 3. It kind of depends how you work it, right? But you could argue that by using Everflowing Sun, it thins it by 3, because the Everflowing Sun is an empty card. Like, it's not actually part of your deck as such. When you use it, you draw 2 more cards. So that's 3 cards, effectively, like you've kind of gone through. And your deck, like, with 2 copies of Everflowing Sun, your deck is effectively like 34. With Taisho, you then can start cycling through the 34. It's something like that. Like, I really don't care about Thor enough to like really go into massive amounts of detail about anything. I just want to do the deck description, give you a general idea of how it works, what's important, why it's important. But a lot of this I've used before, and a lot of the stuff that even I haven't used before is very obvious while I'm using it, because you can see in my other deck descriptions that I value certain things very highly. And you can see there's overlap with what I value highly and with these cards. Time Reflow, love this card. Just, it turns your grave into a toolbox. Suddenly, whatever the board state is, you have the capability, if it's in your grave, to just pull out like that perfect solution. If what you need right now is an earthquake because your opponent is just throwing down 3 Fushimi, Time Reflow can do that if the earthquake is in your grave. Also, it effectively like multiplies the number of copies you have of something. If you desperately need Soul Extraction, but you can only find 1, and the other 3 copies are all at the bottom of your deck, and you're just never going to find them, Time Reflow can effectively just be another 3 copies of Soul Extraction, if that's what you need it to be. It's a very, very versatile card. I don't think 2 Devotion is like really that great a price to have that great an amount of versatility in the card. I think you definitely need it. You're a bit worried about just having like 2-3 copies of it in your hand. So I'm down to 3 just because I don't like the idea of, your hand getting clogged with this. Drawing this when you don't need it is very, very annoying. When you're desperately looking for that body you can just throw down and start generating devotion for you, and instead you pick up a Time Reflow. So it's a balancing act of Time Reflow a lot of the time. Skadi, yeah, I mean, as I've already said, in general, this is like these are thick. Like Kraken 40 health, Skadi 40 health is a 5 per 10. Kraken is a 3.5 per 10. Like, all it takes, like if your opponent does not jump on this, all it takes is just 2 Skadis on the board, and you've got 2 4 per 10s with 40 health each. That is crazy, and that's not even taking into account, like, if your opponent can't deal with that, you know there's going to be a battle plan being put down the turn after that. You know that after these 2 Skadi, there's going to be a Kraken. If your opponent can't take care of the 80 health of the 2 Skadi, it is just game over. Like, this can be a very, very oppressive deck. I am extremely happy with the deck because I kind of built it from the beginning, just using, like all my experience of previous campaign runs. And then we just smashed it. Like, Egyptian mythology and Norse mythology, we actually got like 40-minute times, 40, 50-minute times, which are like the fastest I've ever done those mythologies. It was mostly because I think, like, I didn't really have to consider the goddess at all. Like, I actually think that, like, we could take exactly the same deck with Odin, and I think I might just take the same deck with Odin because there's no reason to change it. This deck smashes, and it would be even better with Odin. But we'd actually be slow with Odin because he offers you more options and more abilities, and, like, more choices. We'd actually have to slow down and actually consider all he can offer, especially in terms of like the ability to inflict lethal. Odin can inflict some absolutely stupid lethals, which is why he's one of the strongest goddesses in the game. Like, he's top tier. I've said before that I think there are 4 top tier gods. Odin's one of them. He's just ridiculous, and you could take this deck and just smash with it. The deck is so super solid. Thor is just like standing there, like clapping, like, okay, I'll give you 2 devotion every now and then. Dude, like, if you're already destroying your opponent's permanents, if you're already putting in work with your Kraken and your Skadi, getting this, like, these 2 devotion pings isn't a big deal. If you want to play 4, then have at it, but I think she's honestly one of the worst. She doesn't give you anything. There's nothing exciting about her. She's super boring. I'm only doing her now because I want to eventually do, like, all of them, and I had the motivation right now. And I decided, you know, like after Izanagi I was exhausted, so I just do someone who like doesn't force you to think at all. Like she offers nothing, you do nothing, she's not difficult. But the deck's amazing. So, you know, the deck list is definitely recommended for Thor or for someone else. It doesn't matter really. It's an absolutely bomb deck list. I'm super proud of this. Just I wouldn't play Thor if I was you.